The diner was quiet that evening. Clara Bennett stood behind the counter, wiping down the surface with a damp cloth. The small bell above the door hadn't rung in hours, and the only sounds were the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional drip from the leaky faucet in the kitchen sink. Outside, rain drizzled steadily, turning the cracked asphalt of the parking lot into a shiny, uneven mirror. It wasn't unusual for business to slow down this late in the evening, especially on a night like this when the weather kept most people indoors. Clara sighed and glanced at the clock on the wall. It was nearly 10 o'clock, just an hour before closing time. She had already started cleaning up, stacking chairs upside down on the tables and sweeping crumbs off the floor. Her feet ached from standing all day, but she didn't mind. Running the diner was her life's work, and even though it wasn't much, it gave her a sense of purpose. Clara liked knowing that she could offer a warm meal and a friendly smile to anyone who walked through the door, no matter how tired or lonely they might be. As she bent down to pick up a napkin, someone had dropped near the cash register. The bell above the door jingled softly. Clara straightened up, surprised to see anyone coming in so close to closing time. Standing in the doorway was a man. He hesitated for a moment, as if unsure whether he should step inside or turn around and leave. His clothes were soaked from the rain, clinging to his thin frame, and his face was shadowed by the brim of a worn-out hat. When he finally stepped forward, the wooden floor creaked under his weight. "Sorry," he said in a low voice, glancing around the mostly empty diner. "I didn't mean to bother you." Clara shook her head quickly. "No trouble at all," she replied warmly. "Come on in. You're just in time." She gestured toward one of the booths along the window. "Take a seat wherever you'd like." The man nodded and shuffled over to the nearest booth. He sat down slowly, as if every movement took effort. Clara watched him for a moment, noticing how pale and drawn his face looked. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his hands trembled slightly as he pulled off his wet gloves. He looked like someone who hadn't eaten in days, or slept in weeks. Clara grabbed a menu from behind the counter and walked over to the booth. "Here you go," she said, sliding the laminated sheet across the table. "Let me know what you'd like. Everything's fresh today." The man stared at the menu for a long time without saying anything. Finally, he looked up at her, his expression uneasy. I don't have any money," he admitted quietly. "I'm sorry. I wouldn't have come in if I thought—" Clara held up a hand to stop him. "Don't worry about it," she said firmly. "You look like you need something hot to eat more than anything else right now. Let me fix you a plate." "For a moment?" The man seemed too stunned to respond. Then he nodded gratefully. "Thank you," he whispered. "You don't know how much this means to me." Clara smiled and headed back to the kitchen. As she prepared a simple meal of grilled chicken, mashed potatoes, and steamed vegetables, she couldn't help but wonder about the stranger. Who was he? Where had he come from? And why did he seem so lost and desperate? These questions lingered in her mind, but she pushed them aside. Whatever his story was, it wasn't her place to pry. All that mattered right now was making sure he got a decent meal. When the plate was ready, Clara carried it out to the booth and set it down in front of him. "Here you go," she said brightly. "Dig in while it's still warm." The man stared at the food for a moment, almost as if he couldn't believe it was real. Then he picked up his fork and began eating slowly, savoring each bite as if it were the first meal he'd had in ages. Clara returned to the counter to finish tidying, keeping an eye on him from a distance. Every few minutes he would glance up at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. After finishing his meal, the man leaned back against the booth and let out a deep sigh. "That was amazing," he said, his voice stronger now. "I can't thank you enough." Clara waved a hand dismissively. "It's nothing, really, just glad I could help." The man reached into the pocket of his coat and pulled out something wrapped in a faded piece of cloth. He placed it carefully on the table and slid it toward her. "I wish I could repay you somehow," he said earnestly. "This isn't much, but maybe it'll mean something to you." Clara frowned and picked up the object. It was heavier than she expected, and when she unwrapped the cloth, she found herself staring at a small metallic sphere. Its surface was smooth and cool to the touch, etched with intricate patterns that shimmered faintly in the dim light of the diner. She turned it over in her hands, examining it closely. "What is this?" she asked, looking up at the man. He shrugged. "I'm not entirely sure myself," he admitted, "but it's important, or at least it will be someday." Clara opened her mouth to ask another question, but before she could speak, the man stood up abruptly. "I should go," he said, pulling his damp coat back on. "Thank you again, for everything." Before Clara could protest, he hurried toward the door and disappeared into the rainy night. She stared after him for a moment, then looked down at the strange sphere in her hands. Something about it felt different, almost alive. She shook her head, trying to shake off the odd sensation, and set the object aside. For the rest of the evening, Clara couldn't stop thinking about the man, or the mysterious gift he had left behind. Who was he? Why had he given her such a peculiar item? And what exactly was it supposed to mean? These unanswered questions swirled in her mind as she finished closing up the diner and locked the door behind her. As she drove home that night, the rain continued to fall, drumming against the roof of her car. Clara glanced at the passenger seat where the sphere rested securely in its cloth wrapping. Despite her exhaustion, she felt a strange sense of excitement bubbling beneath the surface. Little did she know this encounter would change her life, forever, and lead her down a path she could never have imagined. The next morning, Clara woke up with the metallic sphere still on her mind. She had placed it carefully on the kitchen counter the night before, intending to take a closer look at it after work. But now, as sunlight streamed through the window and illuminated its smooth surface, she found herself staring at it again. The faint blue glow that seemed to emanate from within the object was mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. It didn't look like anything she had ever seen before. Certainly not something you'd find in a regular store or even online. Clara picked it up cautiously, turning it over in her hands. The etchings on its surface were intricate, swirling, patterns that reminded her of constellations or ancient symbols. She ran her fingers over them, feeling their raised texture against her skin. For a moment she thought she heard a soft hum, but when she paused to listen more closely, the sound vanished. Maybe it was just her imagination playing tricks on her. Still, curiosity got the better of her. What exactly was this thing? And why had Daniel, the man who gave it to her, said it would be important someday? Clara couldn't shake the feeling that there was something extraordinary about it, something far beyond what she could understand. After getting ready for the day, Clara decided to bring the sphere to the diner with her. She wrapped it back in the faded cloth and tucked it into her bag, figuring she could examine it during her lunch break. As she drove to work, she replayed the events of the previous evening in her head. The stranger's desperation, his gratitude, and the mystery surrounding him all felt like pieces of a puzzle she hadn't quite figured out yet. When she arrived at Clara's corner, the diner was already bustling with customers. A group of truck drivers sat at one table, laughing loudly as they shared stories from the road. A young couple occupied another booth, holding hands across the table while sipping coffee. Clara greeted everyone warmly, slipping into her usual routine of taking orders, refilling drinks, and chatting with patrons. Despite the busy atmosphere, her thoughts kept drifting back to the sphere hidden in her bag. Finally, during a lull in the afternoon rush, Clara retreated to the small storage room at the back of the diner. She closed the door behind her, pulled out the sphere, and unwrapped it once more. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, she studied it intently, trying to decipher its purpose. She pressed her fingers gently against the surface, half expecting something to happen. At first, nothing did, but then, just as she was about to give up, the sphere began to vibrate slightly in her hands. Clara gasped and nearly dropped it. The vibrations grew stronger, accompanied by a low hum that filled the tiny room. Suddenly, a beam of light shot upward from the sphere, projecting images onto the ceiling. Clara scrambled backward, her heart racing. The images were unlike anything she had ever seen. Complex diagrams of star systems, alien landscapes dotted with towering crystalline structures, and streams of symbols that looked like some kind of unknown language. What is this? Clara whispered aloud, her voice trembling. She reached out tentatively to touch the sphere again, but the projection remained steady, cycling through different scenes. One image showed a map of stars connected by glowing lines, as if marking a route through space. Another displayed what appeared to be a massive portal suspended in the void, surrounded by shimmering energy fields. Clara stared at the projections, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Was this real? Could these images actually represent places outside Earth? Or was she losing her grip on reality? Clara pinched herself lightly to make sure she wasn't dreaming. No, the sphere was definitely projecting something tangible, something deliberate. Whatever it wasn't random or accidental. Someone or something had created it for a specific purpose. As the minutes passed, Clara forced herself to calm down. Panicking wouldn't help her understand what she was dealing with. Instead, she grabbed a notebook from the shelf and started jotting down details about the symbols and patterns she saw. She sketched rough outlines of the star maps and noted the shapes of the alien structures. Though she didn't fully comprehend what any of it meant, she hoped that documenting it might lead to answers later. Eventually, the sphere stopped vibrating, and the projections faded away. Clara sat there for a moment, clutching the object tightly in her hands. Her mind raced with questions. Who was Daniel Harper, really? How had he come into possession of such a device? And most importantly, why had he chosen to leave it with her? Before she could dwell on those thoughts further, the sound of footsteps approaching the storage room snapped her back to reality. Quickly, she wrapped the sphere back in its cloth and shoved it into her bag. Just as she stood up, the door opened and her part-time employee, Lisa, peeked inside. "Hey, Clara," Lisa said cheerfully. "I was wondering where you disappeared, too. We've got a couple of new customers out front." Clara forced a smile. "Thanks, Lisa, I'll be right there." Once Lisa left, Clara took a deep breath to steady herself. She knew she couldn't let anyone else see the sphere. Not until she understood more about it. For now, it needed to stay hidden, safe from prying eyes. With one last glance at her bag, she stepped out of the storage room and returned to her duties at the diner. Over the next few days, Clara became increasingly obsessed with unraveling the mystery of the sphere. At night, after closing up the diner, she spent hours researching the symbols and patterns she had documented. She scoured the internet for information, typing keywords like alien artifacts and interstellar maps into search engines. Most of the results led to conspiracy theory websites or science fiction forums, which frustrated her but also intrigued her. Some of the theories sounded far-fetched, but others aligned eerily well with what she had seen in the projections. One evening, while scrolling through an obscure blog about ancient astronaut theories, Clara stumbled upon a post that caught her attention. The author claimed that certain civilizations throughout history had left behind evidence of contact with extraterrestrial beings. They referenced artifacts discovered in remote locations, inscribed with symbols similar to the ones projected by the sphere. According to the post, these artifacts were believed to serve as keys to unlocking hidden knowledge or technology. Clara leaned forward in her chair, her pulse quickening. Could the sphere be one of those artifacts? Was it possible that Daniel had been involved in some kind of secret project related to extraterrestrials? The idea seemed absurd, yet the more she thought about it, the more plausible it felt. After all, how else could she explain the advanced nature of the device in her possession? Determined to learn more, Clara decided to revisit the diner's storage room the following afternoon. This time she brought her laptop with her, hoping to compare the sphere's projections directly with the images she had found online. When she activated the sphere again, the same holographic display appeared, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Clara typed furiously, cross-referencing the symbols and star maps with the blog post and other sources she had bookmarked. As she worked, a pattern began to emerge. The star maps matched known constellations, but they also included additional points of light that didn't correspond to any documented celestial bodies. These extra stars formed a clear path leading to a specific location, a set of coordinates, deep in the desert southwest of town. Clara's heart skipped a beat. Could this be a real destination? A place where the sphere's secrets might be revealed? Before she could delve deeper, the sound of raised voices startled her. She quickly turned off the sphere and stuffed it back into her bag, listening intently. Outside the storage room, two men were arguing loudly about their bill. Clara sighed, in relief. It wasn't directed at her, at least not yet. Still, the interruption served as a reminder that she needed to be careful. If anyone suspected what she was doing, they might try to take the sphere away from her. That night, as Clara lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind buzzed with possibilities. The sphere had already changed her life in ways she couldn't have predicted. It had pulled her out of her ordinary routine and thrust her into a world of mystery and wonder. She didn't know where this journey would lead, but one thing was certain. She couldn't turn back now. Whatever secrets the sphere held, Clara was determined to uncover them, even if it meant stepping far beyond the boundaries of her comfort zone. Clara's days fell into a new rhythm. By day, she ran the diner as usual, greeting customers with a smile and serving up plates of food like nothing was different. But at night, after closing time, her focus shifted entirely to the sphere. It became her obsession, her secret project that consumed every spare moment. She spent hours in the storage room, carefully activating the sphere and studying its holographic projections. Each time she turned it on, the same images appeared. Star, maps, alien landscapes, and streams of symbols. But Clara noticed subtle changes too. Sometimes the patterns shifted slightly, or new details emerged that she hadn't seen before. She began keeping detailed notes in a worn-out notebook she found tucked away in a drawer. Every symbol, every star map, every glowing line connecting distant points in space was sketched and labeled. Clara wasn't an expert in astronomy or technology, but she approached the task with determination, treating it like a puzzle she needed to solve. Her research online led her down strange paths: forums about UFO sightings, articles on ancient astronaut theories, even videos of scientists discussing wormholes and interstellar travel. Some of the information felt overwhelming, but other parts clicked into place, helping her piece together fragments of understanding. One evening, while reviewing her notes, Clara realized something important. The coordinates projected by the sphere weren't random, they pointed to a specific location. Using her laptop, she cross-referenced the star maps with satellite images and topographical data. After hours of painstaking work, she narrowed it down. The coordinates led to an abandoned observatory deep in the desert, about 200 miles from town. The observatory had been shut down decades ago due to lack of funding, and now it stood forgotten, crumbling under the weight of time and neglect. Clara stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Was this where the sphere wanted her to go? Was this the key to unlocking its secrets? She didn't know for sure, but the thought of visiting the observatory filled her with both excitement and dread. What if she found answers there? And what if those answers were more than she could handle? Despite her fears, Clara decided to investigate. She couldn't ignore the pull of curiosity any longer. Over the next few days, she prepared quietly, making plans to visit the observatory during her next day off. She packed a small bag with essentials: water, snacks, a flashlight, and, of course, the sphere wrapped securely in its cloth. She told herself she was being cautious, not reckless. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into uncharted territory, both literally and figuratively. The morning of her trip arrived, and Clara woke up early, her stomach churning with nerves. She drove out of town, leaving behind the familiar sights of the diner and her quiet little life. As she headed toward the desert, the landscape changed dramatically. The green fields and scattered houses gave way to barren stretches of sand and rock, interrupted only by the occasional cactus or tumbleweed rolling across the road. The air grew hotter, drier, and heavier with each passing mile. When she finally reached the observatory, it looked even worse than she had imagined. The building was a shadow of its former self. Its walls cracked and faded, its roof partially collapsed. A rusted sign hung crookedly over the entrance reading, "Desert Star Observatory," in peeling letters. Clara parked her car nearby and stepped out, squinting against the harsh sunlight. The silence was eerie, broken only by the faint whistle of the wind sweeping through the ruins. Taking a deep breath, Clara grabbed her bag and approached the observatory. The heavy metal door groaned loudly as she pushed it open, revealing a dim interior filled with dust and debris. Inside, old equipment lay scattered around, broken telescopes, stacks of yellowed papers, and shelves lined with empty jars and forgotten tools. The air smelled musty, tinged with the metallic tang of rust. Clara moved cautiously, her footsteps echoing softly in the vast, empty space. As she explored, she noticed something odd. One corner of the room seemed less neglected than the rest. There was a desk covered in papers, some of which appeared relatively recent. Curious, Clara walked over and began sorting through them. To her surprise, she discovered journals, handwritten, notes and sketches that looked eerily similar to the projections from the sphere. The handwriting was shaky but legible, and the entries were dated over several years. They belonged to someone named Daniel Harper. Clara froze, her hands trembling as she flipped through the pages. This was the same man who had given her the sphere, the starving stranger who had walked into her diner just weeks ago. Now standing in the ruins of the observatory, she realized she had stumbled upon his story. The journals chronicled his involvement in a secret government project aimed at studying extraterrestrial phenomena. According to the entries, Daniel and his team had been experimenting with advanced technology capable of opening portals to other worlds. But something had gone terribly wrong. An accident during one of their tests had left Daniel stranded between dimensions, unable to return home. The later entries grew increasingly frantic. Daniel wrote about trying to repair the damage, searching desperately for a way to stabilize the portal. He mentioned the sphere repeatedly, referring to it as a key designed to activate the gateway. But he also expressed fear that others might misuse the technology, fear that humanity wasn't ready for what lay beyond. In his final entry, written months before he appeared in Clara's diner, Daniel vowed to protect the sphere and ensure it ended up in the right hands. Tears welled up in Clara's eyes as she read the last words scrawled across the page. If anyone finds this, please finish what I started. The truth is out there waiting for us to find it. Clara sat back, her mind reeling. Everything suddenly made sense. The mysterious man, the sphere, the coordinates leading here. Daniel had entrusted her with the key to completing his mission. But why her? Why had he chosen a simple diner owner to carry on his legacy? Clara didn't have the answers, but she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't turn away now. Whatever lay ahead, she owed it to Daniel, and perhaps to all of humanity, to see this through. With renewed resolve, Clara gathered the journals and placed them carefully in her bag alongside the sphere. She continued exploring the observatory, searching for anything else that might help her understand the technology. In a hidden compartment beneath the desk, she found a small device resembling a remote control. Its surface was smooth and featureless except for a single button in the center. Clara hesitated, unsure whether she should press it, but something inside her urged her forward, telling her to trust the process. She pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a low hum filled the room, growing louder and more intense. Clara shielded her eyes as a blinding light erupted from the center of the observatory, illuminating the entire space. When the brightness faded, she saw it, a shimmering portal hovering in midair, pulsating with energy. It looked exactly like the one she had seen in the sphere's projections. Clara's heart raced. She was standing face to face with the unknown, staring into a gateway that promised answers, but also unimaginable risks. She glanced at the sphere in her hand, its faint blue glow steady and reassuring. Whatever happened next, she would face it head-on. Taking a deep breath, Clara stepped closer to the portal, ready to take the first step into a world beyond her wildest dreams. Clara stood frozen, staring at the glowing portal. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, a swirling mass of colors and light, shifting and pulsing like a living thing. The air around it crackled with energy, and a faint breeze seemed to emanate from its center, tugging gently at her clothes and hair. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, each beat loud enough to drown out the hum of the portal. Her mind raced with questions. Where did it lead? What would she find on the other side? And most importantly, should she step through? She glanced down at the sphere in her hand. Its soft glow seemed brighter now, almost as if it were encouraging her to move forward. Clara took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. This was it, the moment Daniel Harper's journals had been leading up to. He had trusted her with the sphere, believing she would carry on his mission. Now, standing here in the ruins of the observatory, she felt the weight of that responsibility pressing down on her. But fear lingered too. What if stepping through the portal meant never coming back? What if the world on the other side was dangerous or, worse, hostile? Clara shook her head, pushing those thoughts aside. She reminded herself why she was doing this, not just for Daniel, but for something bigger. If there truly was knowledge or technology waiting beyond the portal, it could change everything. Humanity might finally understand its place in the universe. With trembling hands, Clara tightened her grip on the sphere and stepped closer to the portal. As she approached, the energy around it grew stronger, sending shivers down her spine. She hesitated for a moment, then reached out cautiously, letting her fingers brush against the surface. It felt cool and smooth, like water rippling beneath her touch. Taking one last look at the observatory behind her, she closed her eyes and stepped through. For a brief moment, Clara felt as though she were falling, her body weightless and untethered. Colors swirled around her, blinding and chaotic, and a strange sensation washed over her, like being pulled in every direction at once. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the sensation stopped. Clara opened her eyes and found herself standing in an entirely different place. The landscape before her was breathtakingly beautiful yet utterly alien. Twin suns hung low in the sky, casting golden light across rolling hills covered in shimmering grass that sparkled like diamonds. Towering crystalline structures dotted the horizon, their surfaces reflecting the sunlight in dazzling patterns. The air smelled sweet, like flowers mixed with something metallic, and a gentle breeze carried the sound of distant chimes. Clara stared in awe, unable to believe what she was seeing. This wasn't Earth. It couldn't be. Everything about this place felt otherworldly, from the vibrant colors to the strange hum that seemed to resonate in the air. She looked down at the sphere in her hand and noticed it glowing even brighter now, reacting to the environment around her. It was as if the sphere recognized this place, guiding her toward something specific. As she walked further into the alien world, Clara began noticing signs of intelligent life. Strange symbols etched into the ground matched the ones she had seen in the sphere's projections. Pathways made of smooth stone led between the crystalline structures, and small devices resembling machines floated silently overhead. None of them paid her any attention, moving along their programmed routes without pause. Despite the beauty of the world, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She turned her head, scanning the area for movement. At first, she saw nothing unusual, but then out of the corner of her eye she caught a glimpse of something humanoid darting behind one of the crystal towers. Her pulse quickened. Was someone, or something, following her? Before she could investigate, a voice spoke directly into her mind. It wasn't audible in the traditional sense, but rather a presence that filled her thoughts with calm, measured words. "Welcome, traveler," it said. "You have come far to reach this place." Clara froze, her breath catching in her throat. Who are you?" she asked aloud, her voice shaking. "We are the Keepers," the voice replied. "Guardians of this realm and stewards of the knowledge you seek." Clara's mind raced. The Keepers? Were they aliens? Spirits? Something else entirely? She wanted to ask more questions, but the voice continued before she could speak. "You carry the key," it said, referring to the sphere. "It has chosen you as its bearer. Do you accept the responsibility that comes with it?" Clara hesitated. Responsibility? For what? She still didn't fully understand what the sphere was or why it had brought her here. But deep down, she knew she couldn't turn back now. Whatever this journey entailed, she was ready to face it. "Yes," she whispered finally. "I accept." The moment she spoke, the sphere reacted violently. It pulsed with a brilliant flash of light, nearly blinding her. When the brightness faded, Clara found herself holding not just a simple sphere, but a fully activated device humming with power. Holographic displays surrounded her, showing detailed maps, instructions, and streams of information she couldn't yet decipher. "The time has come," the keeper's voice said solemnly. "Your arrival marks the beginning of a new chapter for your kind and ours. Use what you learn wisely." Clara nodded, though she wasn't sure how to respond. Before she could ask what exactly she was supposed to do next, the floating machines nearby began converging on her location. They emitted soft beeps and whirs, projecting holograms of their own. One of them displayed a map of the alien terrain, highlighting a path leading deeper into the crystalline city. Another showed images of ancient artifacts similar to the sphere, suggesting they held pieces of forgotten knowledge. Realizing she had no choice but to follow the map, Clara set off down the designated path. The ground beneath her feet felt firm despite its glittering appearance, and the air remained warm and fragrant. As she walked, she couldn't help but marvel at the sheer scale of the structures towering above her. Each one seemed designed with precision, their angles and curves forming intricate patterns that defied logic. After walking for what felt like hours, Clara arrived at a massive structure shaped like a pyramid. Its surface glowed faintly, and, when she stepped inside, the interior lit up automatically, revealing rows upon rows of shelves containing glowing orbs identical to the one she held. These orbs floated gently in midair, each emitting a unique frequency of light and sound. A machine hovered toward her, extending a mechanical arm. It gestured for her to place the sphere into a slot on a pedestal at the center of the room. Clara hesitated again, unsure whether she should trust the machine. But the sphere itself seemed to vibrate in agreement, urging her to comply. Taking a deep breath, Clara placed the sphere into the slot. Instantly, the entire room came alive. Lights danced across the walls, and the orbs on the shelves began spinning, rapidly, releasing streams of data that merged into a single cohesive image projected onto the ceiling. It was a map, not just of stars and planets, but of entire galaxies interconnected by glowing pathways. Clara realized this must be some kind of galactic network, a system for traveling between worlds. The keeper's voice returned, explaining the significance of what she was seeing. "This is the Nexus," it said, "a bridge connecting countless civilizations across the cosmos. Your species stands at the threshold of joining this greater community. But beware, knowledge brings both opportunity and danger." Clara listened intently, absorbing every word. She understood now why Daniel had risked so much to protect the sphere. It wasn't just a tool, it was a gateway to understanding humanity's potential role in the universe. And somehow she had been chosen to play a part in making that happen. As the holographic display faded, Clara retrieved the sphere from the pedestal. It felt heavier now, charged with purpose. She knew her journey wasn't over, not by a long shot. There was still so much to learn, so many mysteries to unravel. But for the first time in her life, Clara felt truly alive, driven by a sense of wonder and possibility she had never known before. With the sphere safely tucked away in her bag, Clara left the pyramid and began retracing her steps toward the portal. Along the way, she paused to admire the alien landscape one last time, committing its beauty to memory. As she stepped back through the shimmering gateway, she felt a renewed determination burning within her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them. For better or worse, her life and perhaps the future of humanity would never be the same again. When Clara stepped back through the portal, she found herself once again in the dusty, crumbling observatory. The golden light of the alien world faded instantly, replaced by the dim glow of the setting sun streaming through cracks in the walls. For a moment she stood still, letting her eyes adjust to the sudden change. Her heart was racing, her mind buzzing with everything she had just experienced. It felt surreal, like waking up from an incredibly vivid dream. But the sphere in her hand was proof that it had all been real. Clara took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She glanced around the room, half expecting something to have changed during her absence. But everything looked exactly as it had before. The broken equipment, the scattered papers, the musty smell of decay. The only difference was her. She wasn't the same person who had stepped through the portal hours earlier. Something inside her had shifted, awakened by the knowledge and responsibility now resting on her shoulders. She walked over to the desk where she had found Daniel Harper's journals and set the sphere down carefully. Opening her bag, she pulled out the notebooks and began flipping through them again. This time the entries made even more sense. Daniel hadn't just been part of a failed experiment. He had been working toward something monumental, something that could bridge humanity with other civilizations across the stars. And now Clara realized she was carrying his torch. But there was no time to waste. If the Nexus truly existed, and if Earth could one day join it, then Clara needed to act quickly. The information stored in the sphere was too important to keep hidden. Yet, at the same time, she couldn't trust anyone blindly. Whoever she shared this with would need to understand the gravity of what they were dealing with. Humanity wasn't ready for such advanced knowledge. Not yet. It had to be handled carefully, thoughtfully. As Clara packed up her things to leave, she noticed something strange outside. A black SUV was parked near her car, its engine idling quietly. Two men sat inside, their faces obscured by tinted windows. Clara froze, her stomach tightening. She hadn't seen anyone when she arrived earlier. Who were these people and why were they here? Her instincts kicked in. Grabbing her bag, she stuffed the sphere and Daniel's journals inside and zipped it shut. Moving cautiously, she peeked out the observatory window, trying to get a better look at the vehicle. Just then, the driver's door opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit and sunglasses despite the fading sunlight. His movements were deliberate, confident. As he approached the building, Clara ducked back into the shadows, her heart pounding. She knew she couldn't let him find her, or the sphere. Slipping quietly toward the rear exit, she pushed open the rusted metal door and slipped outside. The desert air hit her like a wall, hot and dry. But she didn't stop to think about it. She ran as fast as she could, keeping low and using the uneven terrain for cover. When she reached her car, she fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped them. Finally, she managed to unlock the door and slide behind the wheel. The engine roared to life, and Clara sped away, glancing nervously in the rearview mirror. Sure enough, the SUV was already pulling out after her. Panic surged through her veins, but she forced herself to focus. She couldn't outrun them forever, not in this barren wasteland. She needed a plan, and fast. Clara drove toward the nearest town, hoping to lose her pursuers among the streets and buildings. As she sped along, her mind raced. Who were these men? Had they been watching her since Daniel gave her the sphere? Or had they tracked her here somehow? Whatever the case, they clearly wanted the sphere, and they weren't going to give up easily. Reaching the outskirts of the town, Clara spotted a gas station and pulled in abruptly. She parked her car near the pumps and jumped out, pretending to check the tire pressure while keeping an eye on the road. Moments later, the SUV appeared, slowing down as it passed the station. Clara held her breath, praying they wouldn't stop. Thankfully, the vehicle continued on, disappearing around a bend. Relieved but still wary, Clara climbed back into her car and drove to a nearby motel. She checked in under a fake name, paying cash to avoid leaving a trail. Once inside her room, she locked the door and drew the curtains tightly shut. Setting her bag on the bed, she pulled out the sphere and stared at it, her mind swirling with questions. Why had those men come after her? Were they government agents? Scientists? Something worse? Exhaustion finally caught up with her, and Clara collapsed onto the edge of the bed, cradling her head in her hands. She felt overwhelmed, torn between fear and determination. This wasn't just about her anymore. If those men got their hands on the sphere, who knew what they might do with it? They could misuse its power, exploit it for selfish gain, or worse, expose humanity to dangers it wasn't prepared to face. Clara knew she couldn't handle this alone. She needed help, but from someone she could trust completely, someone smart, resourceful, and discreet. There was only one person she could think of: Ryan Carter. Ryan was a private investigator she'd met a few years ago when he helped track down a missing employee at the diner. He was sharp, dependable, and had a knack for staying off the radar. Most importantly, he owed her a favor. Clara picked up her phone and dialed his number, her fingers trembling slightly. "Ryan," she said when he answered. "It's Clara. I need your help." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Clara? What's going on?" "I can't explain over the phone," she said urgently. "Can you meet me tonight? It's important." Ryan hesitated but agreed, promising to come as soon as possible. Clara gave him the address of the motel and hung up, her nerves still on edge. She didn't know how much she could tell him, or whether he'd even believe her, but she had no choice. She needed someone to watch her back. A couple of hours later, there was a knock at the door. Clara peered through the peephole and saw Ryan standing outside, looking puzzled but alert. She unlocked the door and let him in, closing it quickly behind him. "What's going on?" Ryan asked, glancing around the room. "You sounded pretty shaken on the phone." Clara took a deep breath and gestured for him to sit down. "I'm sorry for dragging you into this," she began. "But I don't know who else to turn to." For the next hour, Clara explained everything. The starving man who had given her the sphere, the holographic projections, the trip to the alien world, and the mysterious men who had followed her back. Ryan listened intently, his expression growing more serious with each detail. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "Wow," he said finally. "That's a lot to take in." "I know it sounds crazy," Clara admitted, "but it's all true. Look." She pulled out the sphere and activated it, projecting the star maps and symbols onto the motel room wall. Ryan stared at the display, his eyes wide with disbelief. "This is insane," he muttered. "Aliens? Portals? Are you sure you're not dreaming all of this?" "I wish I was," Clara replied. "But those men are real, and they're dangerous. They'll stop at nothing to get their hands on this thing." She gestured toward the sphere. "And if they succeed, I don't even want to think about what could happen." Ryan nodded slowly, his professional instincts kicking in. "Okay," he said. "Let's say I believe you. What do you need me to do?" Clara hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I need you to help me figure out who those men are and how to stay ahead of them. I also need advice on what to do with this." She pointed to the sphere. "It's too powerful to keep hidden forever, but I can't just hand it over to anyone." Ryan thought for a moment. "First things first," he said. "We need to lay low and gather intel. If those guys are after you, we'll need to move carefully. I'll start digging into any connections between them and the observatory, or anything else related to your story." Clara nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Ryan. I don't know what I'd do without your help." "Don't mention it," he said with a small smile. "Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "That you won't go stepping through any more portals without backup." Clara laughed nervously. "Deal." Over the next few days, Ryan worked tirelessly to uncover information about the men in the SUV. He hacked into databases, followed leads, and even staked out locations tied to the observatory. Meanwhile, Clara stayed hidden, moving between safe houses and avoiding public places. She spent her time studying the sphere, learning more about its functions and the data it contained. Each discovery brought new insights and new challenges. One evening, Ryan called her with news. "I think I found something," he said. "There's a classified government project linked to the observatory. It's codenamed Celestial Gateway. Doesn't take a genius to guess what they were working on." Clara's heart sank. "So they already know about the portal?" "Yeah," Ryan confirmed. "And they've been trying to reactivate it for years. That's probably why they're after you. They think you've cracked the code." Clara clenched her fists, frustration bubbling inside her. They don't care about using it responsibly. They just want control. Well, we're not letting that happen, Ryan said firmly. Not on my watch. Together, Clara and Ryan devised a plan. They would use the sphere to send a message to whoever or whatever controlled the Nexus. If the Keepers were truly guardians of knowledge, maybe they could intervene. Maybe they could protect humanity from itself. The days that followed were a blur of tension and preparation. Clara and Ryan worked tirelessly, staying one step ahead of the men who were hunting them. They moved from safe house to safe house, always careful to cover their tracks. Clara kept the sphere close, studying it whenever she had a moment. She was determined to understand its full potential, to unlock not just its secrets but also its purpose. Each new discovery felt like another piece of a puzzle falling into place. Meanwhile, Ryan dug deeper into the classified project known as Celestial Gateway. The more he uncovered, the clearer it became that the government's interest in the portal wasn't about exploration or understanding. It was about power. Documents hinted at plans to weaponize the technology, using it to dominate other civilizations or exploit alien resources. Clara shuddered at the thought. If such knowledge fell into the wrong hands, the consequences could be catastrophic. One evening, while holed up in a small cabin on the outskirts of town, Clara activated the sphere again. Its holographic interface lit up the room, casting soft, blue light across the walls. She scrolled through streams of data, searching for something, anything that might help her better communicate with the Keepers. As she worked, Ryan sat nearby, poring over printed reports and maps. "Anything useful?" he asked, glancing up from his papers. Clara shook her head. "Not yet," she admitted. "But I think there's more here than we've figured out so far. It's like the sphere is teaching me." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Teaching you?" "Yeah," Clara said, her voice thoughtful. "Every time I use it, I notice new patterns, new functions. It's almost like it adapts to what I need. Or maybe it's guiding me toward something specific." Ryan frowned but didn't press. Further, he trusted Clara's instincts, even if some of this seemed beyond comprehension. "Well, keep going," he said. "We'll need all the answers we can get." As Clara continued her work, the sphere began to respond in ways she hadn't anticipated. One night, as she traced her fingers over its surface, a new projection appeared. A series of images showing Earth from space. At first, they looked ordinary, but then the view shifted, revealing glowing lines connecting cities and landmarks. These lines pulsed with energy, forming a network that spanned continents. Clara realized this must represent the Nexus's influence on Earth, a hidden web linking humanity to the greater galactic community. Her heart raced as she studied the map. There were certain points marked with brighter lights, indicating key locations. One of these points was near the observatory, which made sense given its role in opening the portal, but others were scattered across the globe, in remote deserts, deep oceans, and dense jungles. Clara wondered if these sites held artifacts similar to the sphere, relics left behind by the Keepers to guide humanity toward enlightenment. She shared her findings with Ryan, who immediately saw the implications. "If these are real locations," he said, "then maybe we should check them out. Could give us an edge against whoever's chasing us." Clara nodded, though the idea filled her with both excitement and dread. Traveling to these sites would mean leaving the relative safety of their hideouts and risking capture by those pursuing them. Still, she knew Ryan was right. If they wanted to stay ahead, they needed to act decisively. Over the next few weeks, Clara and Ryan embarked on a journey unlike anything either of them had ever experienced. Guided by the sphere's map, they traveled to each marked location, uncovering ancient ruins, mysterious devices, and cryptic messages etched into stone. Some sites were abandoned and crumbling, while others showed signs of recent activity, tracks in the sand, fresh scorch marks, or surveillance equipment hidden among the rocks. It became clear that they weren't the only ones searching for answers. At one site in the Australian outback, Clara discovered a second sphere buried beneath layers of dirt and vegetation. Unlike hers, this one was dormant, its surface dull and lifeless. She carefully packed it away, sensing it might hold significance later. At another site deep in the Amazon rainforest, they found a massive stone monolith covered in symbols identical to those projected by the sphere. When Clara placed her hand on the monolith, it hummed softly, sending vibrations through her body. Images flashed in her mind. Visions of stars aligning, portals opening, and beings of light welcoming humanity into the Nexus. Each discovery brought Clara closer to understanding the true nature of the sphere and the responsibility entrusted to her. She began to see herself not just as a diner owner thrust into extraordinary circumstances, but as a bridge between worlds. Her role wasn't merely to protect the sphere. It was to ensure humanity approached the Nexus with wisdom and humility. Despite their progress, danger lurked around every corner. The men in black suits grew bolder, tracking Clara and Ryan's movements with increasing precision. In Morocco, they narrowly escaped an ambush after visiting a desert temple. In Iceland, they were forced to abandon their vehicle when drones appeared overhead. Through it all, Ryan remained steadfast, his calm demeanor keeping Clara grounded during moments of panic. Eventually, their travels led them back to the observatory, the place where it had all begun. Clara felt a strange sense of inevitability as they approached the crumbling building under cover of darkness. Something told her this was where everything would come to a head. Inside, they set up camp, preparing for whatever came next. Clara activated the sphere once more, projecting the star maps onto the walls. This time, however, the projections weren't static. They shifted and changed, forming a countdown of sorts. A date appeared written in glowing numbers. 3 days from now. What does it mean? Ryan asked, staring at the display. Clara swallowed hard. It's a deadline, she said. The Keepers are giving us a chance to prove ourselves, to show we're ready to join the Nexus. Ryan nodded grimly. Then we'd better make it count. For the next 72 hours, Clara and Ryan worked non-stop, piecing together everything they had learned. They documented the artifacts they had found, recorded their observations, and prepared a presentation to share with the world. Clara knew they couldn't keep the Nexus a secret forever, not if humanity was to benefit from it. But revealing its existence required caution. They needed to control the narrative, ensuring people understood the stakes involved. On the final day, Clara stood in the center of the observatory, holding the sphere tightly in her hands. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. She closed her eyes, focusing on the connection she felt with the Keepers. "We're ready," she whispered. "Show us what to do." The sphere responded instantly, glowing brighter than ever before. A beam of light shot upward, piercing the roof and illuminating the night sky. Moments later, the portal reappeared, shimmering with energy. But this time it wasn't empty. Figures emerged from within, tall, luminous beings radiating an aura of peace and authority. The Keepers had arrived. Their presence filled the room, calming Clara's nerves despite the gravity of the situation. One of them stepped forward, addressing her directly. "You have proven worthy," it said, its voice resonating in her mind. "Your actions demonstrate courage, wisdom, and compassion. Humanity is not yet ready to fully embrace the Nexus, but you will serve as its ambassador, guiding your kind toward unity and understanding." Clara bowed her head, overwhelmed by the weight of the task ahead. "I accept," she said simply. As dawn broke, Clara and Ryan emerged from the observatory, greeted by a group of government agents waiting outside. For a moment, tension crackled in the air. But Clara stepped forward confidently, holding the sphere aloft. "This belongs to everyone," she declared, "and you'll never take it from us." To her surprise, the agents lowered their weapons. Among them was a high-ranking official who had been monitoring their activities. He nodded slowly, acknowledging the change in dynamics. "Tell us what we need to know," he said. "We're listening." In that moment, Clara knew the tide had turned. With the Keeper's guidance and her unwavering determination, she had taken the first step toward bridging humanity with the cosmos. The road ahead would be long and challenging, but for the first time she felt truly hopeful. Whatever lay beyond the stars, humanity was no longer alone, and Clara Bennett, once just a diner owner, had become its guide.